Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, we're talking about Trump's first 100 days as the reviews are rolling in. But I also want to address this, particularly since President Obama was just in Chicago the last couple of days.
Yeah, speaking to the kiddies yesterday.
Mm-hmm. And this Politico story about that Iran deal, which is one of the matters that President Trump inherited, not a big fan of it. I think he's described it as the worst deal ever negotiated in human history. Most cases you would say that's hyperbole, but he may be onto something about this. This Politico story, Politico, so not fake news. I don't think the left would consider Politico. No. One of the underreported aspects of the deal that Obama made with Iran was the release of a number of Iranians. 7 men that were freed, and they were characterized at the time as civilians, businessmen convicted or awaiting trial of sanctions-related offenses, violations of the trade embargo that had been imposed on Iran. In reality, reports Politico, some of them were accused by Obama's own Justice Department of posing threats to national security. 3 were alleged to be part of an illegal procurement network supplying Iran with U.S.-made microelectronics with applications in surface-to-air and cruise missiles like the kind Tehran test-fired recently. Another was serving an 8-year sentence for conspiring to supply Iran with satellite technology and hardware. 3 of the fugitives allegedly sought to lease Boeing aircraft for an Iranian airline that authorities say had supported Hezbollah, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization. A 4th charged with conspiring to buy thousands of U.S.-made assault rifles and illegally import them into Iran. Just 7 civilians. Well, perhaps Obama will be remembered as the greatest president in American history, at least in Tehran. For more on this and Trump's first 100 days, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Juan Williams, of course, Fox News contributor, columnist for The Hill, thehill.com. Juan, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Dan. That was a pessimistic report there.
Well, how would you interpret Politico's report?
No, I would say that it's not good news, but I mean, this is known news. I mean, it's not like it was hidden or up somebody's sleeve. I guess it's part of the deal, but I mean, the ultimate end of the deal was to prevent Iran from, gaining nuclear weapons. And even the Trump administration says, so far they've complied with the deal as we made it.
Well, the Trump administration, starting with Rexon and others, have said they're not complying, and including the president, they're not complying with the spirit of the deal.
Yeah, so they want to complain at the edges because they complained, as you rightly said, from the beginning, calling it the worst deal ever made.
Well, do you think Iran's supplying nuclear weapons to North Korea?
No. Well, if that was the case, I think we would know that. Amy, I think the question there is about Iran, giving intelligence. Remember that Pakistani scientist that was spreading nuclear technology not only in Iran but around the third world? I think it's that kind of influence. It's not that they're actually giving them the material.
So let's talk about Trump's first 100 days, transition to the incumbent president. And, on the accomplishment front, it's like what I had to do when assessing Obama's first 100 days from that president's perspective and the Democratic Congress's perspective at the time. Are they accomplishing the agenda they set out, even if I'm opposed to much of that agenda? So I would put that same question to you with respect to Trump.
Well, I think that obviously Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court is the cherry on the top of the president's first 100 days. Mm-hmm. You have to give some credit, of course, to the Republican majority in the Senate and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell for holding the seat for a year, then for using the nuclear option when the nominee couldn't get the 60 votes. But to me, that's the one outstanding accomplishment. The rest of it, it seems to me, is failed promises on, the immigration ban stuff, the wall. The biggest of all would be repeal and replace on the health care deal. Just hasn't happened. I think you see this in the polling where, people who were open to Donald Trump now are kind of thinking, this guy, you can't trust him, or he just didn't deliver. But his core support's still there. Nonetheless, we've never seen the kind of opposition to a first, first 3 months of a president that we have to Donald Trump. He's the least popular president for that time in the modern era.
So Democrats this morning they want to take wall funding out of this budget debate, and then this morning we're learning that Trump administration is leaning more toward border security measures rather than building an actual wall. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, but now, I mean, that's a fallback position. Remember, first it was Mexico was going to pay for it, then he's trying to get the U.S. to pay for it, and now he's going back basically to the position of not only President Obama but President George Bush, which is to say, we do need things like drones and electronic surveillance and helicopters, and we can beef up the border, the actual number of men and women on the border. That was all in the deal that the Senate passed, in terms of immigration reform. So now he's moving back to that standard. I think he just knew he was getting nowhere, and I don't think the Republicans want to shut down the government this week.
Well, and DHS Kelly has said the same thing in terms of enhancing the border, the barrier at the border. But, isn't part of Trump's mistake on this just obsessing about who's paying for the wall, whether it's $10 billion or $25 billion or a multiple of that? We're talking about a relatively small amount of money in the grand scheme of a $4 trillion budget. And to obsess about footing the bill when you have a Republican Congress that can appropriate the funds is creating a controversy where, frankly, generally one need not exist.
Well, but, that's part of the charm or the appeal of Donald Trump is he says things so flatly, don't you think, Dan? So
yeah.
Maybe, that's how he gets himself in trouble. I think he should stop tweeting, but the tweets, they're so flat, they drive the news cycle. I think he really is taken with them, so I don't see him dropping them, but it's that he says things so flatly, and even when he turns out to kind of be like the Music Man, he just comes into town and he's pumping his fist and he's making all these people are like, well, okay, but people who I think are the difference makers right in the middle are starting to buy off him. That's what we see in the
So Juan, let me maybe we can strike this deal. If I can get Trump to stop tweeting, will you get Chelsea Clinton to stop tweeting?
Boy, I tell you what, I think I get the better end of that. I don't pay that much attention to Chelsea Clinton.
But when she gets something wrong, everybody knows. So Donald Trump did an interview with the AP, Associated Press, and talked about ratings because, they asked him about that. And he, had mentioned that the CBS morning show had the highest ratings when he was on, second only to 9/11 and the falling of the towers. What is your response to that?
I don't get it. So this weekend, there's a lot of talk about his TV viewing habits, how consumptive they are. That from morning to night, that he is switching, watching multiple news channels, and loves it.
Yeah.
Someone said he even loves to hate on CNN. It's like, wow, this is so. So for lots of people, it wouldn't make any difference. I don't even think that people who listen to our, as we're talking today, are like plugged into what's the ratings. But Donald Trump is. It appears to be that's the gold in his mind, gold standard in his mind for anything. And I find it fascinating, but to me, it's like inside baseball for media and advertisers.
Well, Juan, choose your words carefully because the president's watching you. So now, just in terms of accomplishments, first 100 days, on the executive side, again, to be fair, there have been a number of promises kept. He withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He advanced an executive order on regulatory relief. 2 existing regulations must go for every new federal regulation. And some other specific regulatory relief in the area of coal and other sectors. So, the legislative agenda, particularly because of Obamacare replace, has stalled so far early. But on the executive front, he has done a number of the things he said he would do.
Yeah, but again, to me, this was not of the effect, not of the magnitude that he had promised on the campaign trail, and that's why when he talks about the things I'm going to get done in the first 100 days, which is a synthetic creation anyway, but
right.
one that he bought into.
Right.
The regulatory stuff just doesn't ring any bells out there. It's not like, oh, yeah, that's why we elected the great disruptor, Donald Trump. I think people thought that he could, as he had promised, deliver on some of the big items. And here I would really point you toward tax cuts.
Which may be coming this week.
Yeah, well, boy, that would be a shocker, Dan and Amy. If he could do that this week, all of a sudden, and we're sitting here on Tuesday, wow, that would. I think the political system would have its head spin.
Well, he's talking about structural tax reductions that would be even bigger than Reagan's, including telegraphing a corporate tax reduction to 15%. That would be a very aggressive package. Do you see that coming? And what is your sense of receptivity on the Hill? This is going to be another straight party line vote.
No, not at all. I mean, among Republicans, there's such a variety of views. Things like the border tax. Donald Trump has had to change his position to support and oppose border taxes because of divisions among Republicans. You have different companies who would be impacted differently by a border tax. But then you start thinking about things like corporate deductions. Everybody on all sides of this issue, different dogs in the fight. And it divides people across political lines. There's some areas that would benefit, others that would say, no, not for us. And that's why it hasn't been done since the Reagan era.
Well, right, but if you go back to 81 and 86, the two Reagan tax cuts, now they were 86 particularly bipartisan, but there were the same arguments on the ancillary tax matters, but the top line were the huge rate reductions, and that's what ultimately sold it.
Correct, but remember, at the time it was seen as being revenue neutral. Nobody thinks that what's going on now is going to be revenue neutral, which is why they had initially planned to do the health care replace and repeal first, hoping there would be tremendous savings there that would allow them to justify the loss of revenue in the tax plan. They don't have that right now, so they're looking for things that won't stir the political pot of anger as tax giveaways for the rich, but they don't have the underlying resource at the moment. So it aggravates the Republican upset, especially during the Obama years, with the growth in the deficit.
All right. Hey, Juan Williams, real quickly before we let you go. Two things. Are you going to the Correspondents' Dinner Saturday? And did Bill O'Reilly ever use a loofah mitt on you?
Be honest, Juan.
What a wonderful way to start my day.
Yes.
I'm going to go to the dinner. I don't think I've ever been to the dinner. I've been to the dinner for 30 years or something. I've never seen one without a president, so this is going to be kind of interesting. And
loofah mitts?
No mitts for me.
Okay.
Oh. All right, good. That's good.
Thank you.
You haven't been no abuse directed at Juan Williams other than rhetorical. All right, Juan Williams, Fox News contributor, columnist for The Hill, thehill.com. Juan, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
And have a great day.
You too.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.